Hey guys, Eli here from Nintendo Network 64, here today to fittingly review Inazuma 11, the 3DS, well, DS really, soccer game, and it's very fitting because today is the day of the World Cup final, and I'm cheering for Argentina even though I think Germany's gonna win. But let's get to the review. For years, we've been hearing about this mysterious game, Inazuma 11. It was released originally on the Nintendo DS years and years ago in Japan, and then finally made its way over to Europe a few years later. In fact, the game is already on its third entry in Japan. After the game finally was released in North America, I finally understood why it took so long to make the journey over from Europe. The game is a soccer RPG. Of course, who in their right minds would think a soccer game would sell in the US? Especially a soccer game that is also a Japanese RPG. Turns out Nintendo thought it could sell alright, especially with the World Cup just around the corner. But how does a soccer RPG really work? Well, as with all RPGs, there is a story in the game. You take control of the captain of the Raymon 11, Mark Evans. At the beginning of the game, the team finds itself in complete disarray. The school wants to shut down the soccer club, the team is awful, and the players don't even have any heart to play the game. After recruiting a few new players and doing some much-needed training, the crew turns out to be quite the formidable soccer team. The story at first begins with the prospect of winning the national championship. As the game progresses, however, the game begins to weave in a second, darker narrative concerning a corrupt and evil Mr. Dark. The story itself isn't too awful, but unfortunately the dialogue can be a little too cheesy at times. Sure, friendship and dedication are all great traits to encourage in a game, but it doesn't have to be so blatantly and obviously pushed down my throat. While exploring Inazuma Town, players will be met with two types of battles. There are smaller 4-on-4 battles which function as the random battle encounters that we have all come to know in RPGs. These battles do not take any longer than a minute or two and are always fun to engage in. Fortunately, random battles are not necessarily required at any point because pure skill will trump XP any day. Those wanting to level up can do so, but the practice a player gets through random battles is much more beneficial. The game also introduces large 11 vs 11 battles, which often function as boss battles. These require players to utilize the full breadth of their team and allow players to learn special new abilities for their players. This makes the usual soccer gameplay even more interesting, as not only are players passing, defending, and shooting, but they're also using their MP gauge to use special abilities to trump each other's moves. Unfortunately, other than the MP gauge with special moves and the idea of random battles, Inazuma 11 is not really much of an RPG. Sure, there are EXP points and levels, but they rise naturally through progression through the story and really are not required to perform well. Yes, there are items to equip to your players that will augment their stats, but I never really found a need to use them because they did not really make a considerable difference. You can even scout out new players, but I never really found that necessary either because my base team from the beginning of the game functioned so well. Even the money seemed kinda pointless. Since players can only use 3 items per match, there was never a need to purchase a large amount of items, so by the end of the game I had way more money than I knew what to do with. In the end, Inazuma 11 is a fun DS soccer game with a story. All the extra RPG elements in the story just kinda seem tacked on or artificial, and players will find that progressing through the incredibly linear story will not require them to use any of the RPG mechanics provided. Heck, there are barely any side quests even present in the game. Finally, it is important to recognize that Inazuma 11 is, in fact, a DS game ported to the 3DS eShop. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but players should know going into Inazuma 11 that it has older looking visuals, lower sound quality, and a notable lack of 3D. The gameplay is still intact, but the presentation value is not what I have come to expect from 3DS titles. Inazuma 11 is not an RPG game with soccer elements. Inazuma 11 is a soccer game with unnecessary RPG elements. Those who enjoy playing and watching the sport of soccer will love playing through Inazuma 11's 12 to 15 hour campaign, especially around the World Cup. Unfortunately, although the gameplay within Inazuma 11 is sound, the notable lack of the RPG-ness in the game leaves Inazuma 11 only for true soccer fans. Fortunately though, those who love soccer will adore Inazuma 11. This game gets an 8.3 out of 10. Please don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe on the video. I'd really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time for another review.